Okay, this is chapter 12 of Zodiac. Zodiac, Monday, March 15th, 1971. In the period after Zodiac's death threat against him, Paul Avery had gone on local TV and taunted the killer, reassured by the weight of the .38 in a concealed holster under his jacket. On January 3rd, 1971, after he had to draw his gun to save a vagrant from a knife attack, he began to have second thoughts. By carrying a gun, I was putting myself in a position where sooner or later I'd have to use it, he told me. I finally got rid of it. 4 months after Avery exposed Zodiac's Riverside connection, the Los Angeles Times received its first letter from the cipher slayer. For the first time, the envelope had a non-San Francisco postmark. It had been mailed from Pleasanton, a small town in nearby Alameda County. Once again, there was double postage on the envelope, 2 6-cent Roosevelts inserted, and the exhortation, "Please rush to editor." The word airmail took up 1/3 of the envelope. It was his 16th letter. He had chosen the paper with the largest circulation in California. As always, he began, "This is the Zodiac speaking. Like I have always said, I am crack-proof. If the blue meanies are ever going to catch me, they had best get off their fat asses and do something, because the longer they fiddle and fart," this phrase, "fiddle and fart around," is an antiquated one and led investigators to suspect Zodiac was a much older man than they had thought. I learned that it is used in areas of Texas, principally around Lubbock County. The more slaves I will collect for my afterlife. I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they're only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. The reason that I'm writing to the Times is this: they don't bury me on the back pages like some of the others. SFPD 0, Zodiac symbol 17 plus. Some of the Bay Area psychiatrists Avery spoke with felt that Zodiac was claiming new victims only on paper. Zodiac's boasts of ever-increasing totals of slaves, said one, may be just that, boasts. Boast or not, Takashi and Armstrong still had to do the same back-breaking amount of work. Near Pacific Union College, a girl's car had been discovered on the White Cottage Road turnout. 2 pieces of her gold-colored jumpsuit were nearby. Her portable radio on the car seat was still going. Groups of 21 PUC students, Brian Hartnell among them, began a search. As snow fell and the morning temperatures dropped, a bloodhound was brought in. Because of the very rugged canyon area, it was 8 days before the body was found. It was only 225 feet away from the abandoned car near Howell Mountain Road under a layer of brush and logs and a torn barracks bag. It was wrapped in an American flag. The body was badly bruised, and there was the bloody mark of a blow on the left side of her head next to her long black hair. A wire noose had been twisted tightly around her neck. A bracelet she had used as a key ring was found. All of the keys had been taken by the killer. Like Cecilia Shepard, she'd been killed in an isolated wooded area. Even though the victim, Linda Keynes, 20, was the second PUC co-ed murdered in the last 2 years, Sheriff Earl Randall assured the students that they were not marked for murder. Randall told the students that there was nothing to connect Zodiac to this recent murder. There was a suspect in St. Helena. A search warrant was issued. The man's house was gone over. A number of unidentified articles were removed for inspection, but nothing came of it. Monday, March 22nd, 1971. Only a week later, a common 4-cent postcard arrived at the Chronicle. It was once again addressed to Paul Averly and covered with more newspaper cutouts of pictures and phrases. The phrases "Sought Victim 12, Peek Through the Pines, Past Lake Tahoe Areas, Sierra Club, and Around in the Snow" had been cut from the newspaper and glued down. Zodiac had decorated the edges with half-moon cuts made by a conductor's punch. Pasted to the back of the card was an artist's rendering of what was later discovered to be an ad for Forest Pines, a condominium village currently under development near Incline Village on the north shore of Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Victim number 12, therefore, may have been Donna Lass, 25, a pretty nurse with frosted blonde hair who had been missing since September 6, 1970, after she left work at the Sierra Hotel in State Line, Nevada. The casino nurse's car was found parked near her small apartment, but there was no sign of any struggle, and only her purse and the clothes she was wearing were missing. An unidentified male caller was told Donna's landlord and employer on the day she vanished that she would not be returning because of an illness in her family. The police were advised by the family that there was no illness. The call was a lie. By telephone, detectives in San Francisco and Nevada tried to divine the meaning of the enigmatic around in the snow, and had Donna been killed and buried near the new development. The ad for the condos had run in the Chronicle 2 days before. Morrill reported to Takashi that the inked words on the address inside of the card conform and are consistent with all other Zodiac writings I have examined. Since we haven't any other suspect in the case, said South Lake Tahoe Police Chief Ray Lawrenson, I suppose the Zodiac theory is as good as any. We most certainly are checking into this possibility because of the postcard sent to the Chronicle. From the beginning, we have believed Miss Lass was abducted and is dead. It is not her character to drop out. She was in the true sense of the word a good girl. Friday, March 25th, 1971. The search for the body was postponed because of snowfall drifts, and it was beginning to snow again. No formal hunt for the young nurse's body was really ever made. Donna Lass has never been found. Takashi wondered if the phrase "peek through the pines" was an invitation by the killer to look through the pine trees in the drawing and find where the girl was buried. Ominously in the foreground was a man digging with a shovel. No one ever asked me. I was surprised the police never asked me any questions, Donna Lass's former roommate Joanne told me years later. I had asked her if Donna had any ties to Riverside. She explained that she and Donna used to go flying with two men from Riverside when they lived in San Francisco. The police had never made a connection with Donna Lass in San Francisco. Donna and I worked Letterman General Hospital on the Presidio. Donna was at the Presidio until June of 1970 and then moved to Lake Tahoe and vanished 3 months later, she confided. There was the Presidio connection again. Paul Stein was killed near the Presidio, and Zodiac vanished into it. If Zodiac had continued northeast, he would have come to 225 Malacora Way, where Donna and Joanne were to live a few months later. Is this near where the killer was living in 1969? Did he meet Donna here and then months later follow and kill her in another state? Wednesday, April 7, 1981. I went to see a low-budget film about Zodiac at the Golden Gate Theater. It played only 1 week and was seen by fewer than 1,000 people. A surly teamster, Bob Jones, is an early suspect in the film, but it is a young man, Hal Reed, who is found to be Zodiac. The film ends by hinting that Zodiac may be the man behind you in the theater. Since Zodiac was a movie fan and an egotist, and since the movie played only to a limited audience in San Francisco, the chances he was in the seat behind you were pretty good. Chronicle reporter Duffy Jennings told me of a contest the producers of the Zodiac movie devised, inviting moviegoers to win a new motorcycle by filling out cards telling in 25 words or less, "I believe the Zodiac killed because." Thinking the real Zodiac might be curious and vain enough to see the film, a huge carton was set up in the lobby for deposit of entries, wrote Jennings, and inside it crouched a man who read each card as it slipped through the slot at the top. Ostensibly, he was to alert theater management via intercom when he spotted a suspicious entry from someone claiming to be the actual killer. Even though no such message was dropped in the slot, the police studied all cards for any similarities to Zodiac's printing. The best Zodiac movie was made by Warner's in 1971. Called Dirty Harry, it starred Clint Eastwood as an Inspector Toshi type searching for a hooded sniper, Scorpio, Andy Robinson. It is faithful to the facts in the Zodiac case and uses an exact copy of Zodiac's printing and Scorpio's letters to the Chronicle. Sunday, April 11, 1971. Dressed in blue jeans and a white blouse, carrying a paperback book and binoculars, Kathy Bielek, 18, took the family car and drove to a county park, Villa Monteavlo, just outside the Saratoga city limits. She parked her car in the arboretum parking lot and walk to a small stream where she could read her Gothic novel and birdwatch in the remote, heavily wooded and untraveled area. This was the same place where two young girls, Kathy Snoozy and Deborah Furlong, had been stabbed over 300 times August 3, 1969. While she read, a figure appeared behind her and watched silently through the tall grass until she was within his reach. With a short-bladed knife, he stabbed her 17 times in the back. As she fell, he struck her another 32 times in her chest and stomach, avoiding her breasts. When the girl was reported missing, the police found her car but were unable to continue the search because of darkness. The hunt for the blonde high school student began again at dawn. Kathy's father, Charles, found her body in the first light of morning while 30 sheriff's deputies searched only yards away. She had been tossed into a shallow gully. When searchers combed the area for clues the next day, they found remnants of her bloody clothing. Santa Clara autopsy surgeons linked the Easter homicide to the 1969 murders of Snoozy and Furlong, calling it a carbon copy killing. 2 weeks later, police received a description of a suspicious man who frequented the area where the killing had taken place. This led them to a man, Carl F. Warner, with short blonde hair and horn-rimmed glasses, who had once attended Oak Grove High School with Snoozy and Furlong and had lived 3 blocks from their homes. He had also once been a suspect in a knife assault on a woman. Armed with a search warrant, detectives surprised Warner, a San Jose City College student studying for a physics exam. They recovered a knife from him and then took the 18-year-old to the scenes of the crimes. In September, he pleaded guilty to all 3 knifings and was given a life sentence. However, Warner was not the Zodiac. He had been a transfer student from Marlborough, Massachusetts, who had moved to California in early 1969 after the Zodiac murders had begun. Wednesday, March 22, 1972. Armstrong and Tashi had good reason to sift carefully through their mail this morning. It had been exactly 1 year since Zodiac had written. They came up with nothing. Tashi, who by this time was becoming increasingly haunted by the case, considered the possibility that Zodiac had been killed in some accident or in the commission of one of his crimes. Perhaps he had moved out of state. Maybe he had worked out his hostility and would kill no more. Or he could be in prison, or in a mental institution. But Takashi would not believe the supreme braggart could go without leaving behind one last taunting message or some incriminating piece of evidence, a gun, knife, cipher table, or at least the remaining portion of Stein's blood-blackened shirt. Takashi sensed that Zodiac was still alive and waiting. Friday, April 7, 1972. At about 9 p.m., Isobel Watson, a 33-year-old legal secretary in San Francisco, got off the bus in Tamalpais Valley and began walking up Pine Hill. Out of nowhere, a white Chevy swerved at her. The car stopped and the driver leapt out. "I'm terribly sorry," he said. "Please let me drive you home." The driver was in his early 40s, about 5 foot 9 inches in height, and wore heavy black-rimmed reading glasses. "No thanks," said Mrs. Watson. The man repeated his request in a very concerned voice, but Mrs. Watson firmly refused. At this, the man flew into a rage and began pulling a short-bladed knife, began to stab at her back. She let out a series of screams. Lights went on in all the nearby houses. Frozen for a moment in the glare, the man raced back to his car and sped off. Neighbors called an ambulance. The woman was rushed to Marin General, where she was treated for her wounds. "I think it's a good chance it was the Zodiac," said Ken Narlow at Napa PD. "A better than 50-50 chance. I've been chasing the SOB for 2.5 years now, and Mrs. Watson's description seems to fit him to a T, and it was a Friday night. Every one of his events has been on a Friday or Saturday. We're taking a long look at the case. I kind of hope it is him. If it is, it gives us another eyewitness and lets us know he's still around." Wednesday, July 12, 1972. The police department still has a Zodiac squad, Inspectors Dave Takashi and Bill Armstrong, wrote Herb Cannon of the Chronicle, but it is 16 months since there has been any action. Even the kook letters are dying out. "We used to average 10 a week," said Takashi. For the next 18 months, there were no sightings of Zodiac or any sort of communication from the killer. In spite of tips from all over the United States and Canada, Takashi and Armstrong were frustrated from the years of false leads and dashed hopes. No real major suspect had ever been developed. Then, after almost 3 years, the killer wrote to the Chronicle again. Wednesday, January 30th, 1974. The postmark on the new Zodiac letter was 940. That showed it had been mailed from an adjacent county south of San Francisco early the day before. Armstrong and Tashi raced to the Chronicle and read it at the paper. I saw and think The Exorcist, a hit movie playing only at the North Point in San Francisco at this time, was the best satirical comedy that I have ever seen. Signed, yours truly. He plunged himself into the billowy wave, and an echo arose from the suicide's grave. Titawo, titawo, titawo. P.S. If I do not see this note in your paper, I will do something nasty, which you know I'm capable of doing. Me, 37, SFPD 0. Zodiac had drawn a strange symbol across the bottom of the page, perhaps a clue to his real identity, or one last slap at the police. There we go. Looking at the Titawo line, Takashi said, another Gilbert and Sullivan snipe and another shot at SFPD. Geez, why does he single us out every time? What's this grudge? The area was that of the Lord High Executioner from the second act of the Mikado. There was no explanation for Zodiac's long silence. As to what brought him out again, The Exorcist was receiving enormous publicity. Author-producer William Peter Blately based his 1983 Exorcist sequel, Legion, on the Zodiac Killer, calling him the Gemini Killer. Of course, said Tashi, this guy is a real nut on movies, but I'm willing to bet that it'll turn out to be all the fuss from Monday night. Tuesday morning's paper had been full of the Monday night's random shootings of whites by religiously motivated blacks in a series of attacks christened the zebra killings. Oh, that's horrible. The most recent had all occurred within a 2-hour period between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. This had set off an around-the-clock manhunt involving the entire homicide crew. Members of a fanatical cult hacked and shot 23 victims over what was to be a 179-day reign of terror. 15 were killed, only 8 of the victims survived. 5 of the killers were eventually convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Takashi had been forced out of his sick bed to work on the zebra attacks, and now, on top of that, he had Zodiac back. His timing's lousy, said Takashi, but at least now I know that everything we've been doing on this case for the last 3 years wasn't in vain. The part that really bothered Armstrong and Takashi was Zodiac's notion of 37 victims. He had said he was going to make his future murders look like accidents. What if this maniac had really killed 37 people? Takashi was going to think about this a whole lot. Takashi and Armstrong were unaware of it, but for the last 4 years, agents and investigators in the area around Vallejo had been developing the first major Zodiac suspect. Now a secret report on the man was being prepared.